Well, last week Dr. Vogelin went through an evening service, service, and was telling us about the founding of the church, how it started. And that got me to thinking about how the church was started. I believe it was God's will. I believe it was His eternal will from that it was His will that there would be a church built and started here in Chesterton, Indiana, that would preach the Word, teach the Word, and be a soul-winning church to spread throughout this whole area. And I thought about how that came about. Of course, I base that I believe that God was in it. I believe He was in it from eternity past, that He knew it all. He knew what He was going to do. He knew His will was going to be carried out. And I find it very interesting, in fact, fascinating, how His will was carried out. The first that I recall was there was a young man in Chicago who the Lord was dealing in his heart. And he started riding a bus across town to a church that was a sound church, teaching and preaching the Word of God. And there, under the pastor there, Dr. Schroeder, he surrendered to preach. Of course, that young man was Roger Vogelin. There was another man in the church by the name of Jerry Rainier. Roger Vogelin then surrendered to preach and went off to Bible college. But there was the other man, Jerry Rainier, who God had in His plan that he would be the key person as far as bringing the Roger Vogelin, Pastor Vogelin, as we know him, preacher as we know him better. And so he did follow on, went into Bob Jones University to be trained as a pastor. And I believe that was God's will right from the very start. I said I based that on Romans 8:28. For all things work to good for them. Well, now I just messed it all up. But we know that all things work together for God, to them that love God, to them that are called according to His purpose. And I know also that we can know that God's way is really not our way. In Isaiah 55:8 it says, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, saith the Lord." And I believe it was his way. And again, in Psalm 18, verse 30, it says, "As for God, His way is perfect. Amen. The word of the Lord is tried. He is a buckler, and all those that trust in Him." And that's what we saw there. Okay, so Pastor Vogelin was off to Bob Jones University, but Jerry Rainier was still there in Chicago. And that's where I came in to it. I had a problem at work, and I contacted the manufacturer, and they sent out their representative in the area. His name was Jerry Rainier. He helped me there, and through that, he really was able to get his foot into the door in the steel mills in the area. And we became friends. He called on me regularly. We'd go out to lunch and that. And then one day, he said to me, "Where do you live?" And I said, "I live in Chesterton." He says, "I've been thinking about moving out to northwest Indiana, be a lot closer, because now it's all my work seems to be in this area." Of course, he was thinking it, but we know where the thoughts came from. God came from God, and He was directing him. And it wasn't long after that, I got a knock on the door, And it was Jerry Rainier and his wife, Mary Alice. And he said, well, I took your advice and I've moved out. I bought a house in Chesterton and we're settled out here now. And he says, can I ask you, do you know for sure if you died today you'd go to heaven? I thought, oh, Jerry, what kind of nut are you? You can't know for sure. I was raised as a Catholic. At that time I was a Lutheran because my wife was Lutheran. And I said, yes. Well, he didn't push it from then, but he did continue on. He and his wife started working on us, coming around, took us out to dinner and to some couple of plays even and other activities. And when he had come, Jerry, his family had come to Chesterton. They joined the First Baptist Church of Chesterton. And he met and became friends with Don Swoverlin, who taught the Sunday school, adult Sunday school class. But Jerry realized that the doctrine of that church was just not right. And he and Don talked about it and decided to confront the pastor about it, which they did. But the pastor, of course, didn't respond the way he should have. In fact, he had them voted out of the church. And by this time, we were having a Bible study. Jerry and Mary Alice and Don Swoverlin and another young man. Jerry had asked me if we would have a Bible study in his house, which we did. And it was all God's doing, okay? I can think about how I came to Chesterton, recruited by U.S. Steel. I can see how God worked there. My wife, her family, her father also worked for U.S. Steel in Ohio, and he was transferred out here. So God was bringing people together. And I believe that it was his will, his way, his perfect way to get the people in the right place. And when preacher graduated from college, he didn't come to Chesterton. He went out to Pennsylvania. And there was problems out there. He was out there. It was not at all what he expected. I believe it was a Methodist church. And so now here was Jerry. And the Lord started working on his heart. There was another Baptist church, a Southern Baptist church in Chesterton. And interestingly enough, that pastor, after our church was started, quit that church and became a member of our church, along with another one of the early leaders of our church here. But anyway, I could see that. I could see how my father-in-law and mother-in-law, they left Chesterton. They had moved to Chesterton when he transferred from Ohio to Southworks. But they were led by work to the Detroit area, where they got saved. And then when the church started, they came back to be part of the church. My mother-in-law taught in the school right from the beginning. And so we see all of that, how that all works together. And I said, I believe that it was God's will. I believe that his perfect plan started back in eternity past. The rest of the story, of course, is that I got saved. How did I get saved? Well, as I say, Jerry and Mary Alice came and were working on us quite effectively. And one day, Mary Alice had came and gave my wife a tract, John R. Rice's tract, my favorite tract. And I came home from work, and my wife said to me, you need to read this right away. And I went upstairs, and I sat down on my bed, and I read that tract. And the Lord convicted my heart. I knew I was a sinner all along. I was one who was doing works my way as a Catholic. Funny thing, not too long ago, a friend, I don't think I'm going too far yet, but a friend of mine got saved. He was a doctor, and he had retired. And he reminded me how that I used to try to get him and another friend when we were kids in the 7th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade to pray the rosary with me. So I had in my heart that I knew that I needed the Lord, but I didn't know how. But I was shown how. And the thing that I want to impress upon you all is like the Rainiers did. They didn't just write me off. I just didn't say, well, the only way you you're a sinner, and when you die, if you don't get saved, you're going to go to hell. They didn't do that. They worked on us and worked on us. They didn't give up, and we were saved by the Lord. And we were able to see this church start. We've been able to see this church grow, see souls saved, see lives changed, including our own. The Lord has been good. And if you're not here today, you need to be saved. And you know, when you get saved, your life changes. The way you go about life, the things you see, the things you understand, things that the Lord blesses with you. It's not going to be easy, but at the same time, you'll be happy, you'll be content, and you'll one day get to be with the Lord in heaven forever. So if you're not saved today, maybe what I said it doesn't sound like it, but let me assure you, I've been saved now for somewhere around 55 years, and the Lord is good, and the Lord is taking care of me. My wife is struggling now, but we have peace and comfort because we know the Lord, and you can know the Lord today. Just open your heart as the word's preached, and then trust that Lord, that He loves you, and His way is perfect. Thank you.